After her husband passed away, the old woman's life became much harder than before. For many years, she and her husband had worked side by side on their farm in California. They once owned a large piece of land with cornfields and several animals. Their days were filled with honest work, but also with peace and dignity. However, everything changed after her husband died. The farm slowly became quiet and lonely. Without his help, the work felt heavier, and the house no longer felt as warm as it once did. As time passed, the old woman grew weaker. Her knees hurt whenever she walked, and she could no longer move as quickly as before. Even so, she still tried to help around the house as much as she could. She lived with her daughter and her son-in-law, hoping they would support each other like a family should. Unfortunately, her daughter had changed. She was no longer the gentle and caring child she once was. Instead, she often became impatient and spoke with anger. The son-in-law was even worse. He was lazy and spent most of his time sleeping or avoiding work. Rather than helping the old woman, the young couple only complained about their difficult life. One night, while the house was quiet, the couple whispered to each other in the darkness. They worried about their future and blamed their problems on the old woman. Instead of finding a solution through hard work, they made a cruel decision. They decided that the old woman must leave the house, believing that life would become easier without her. The next morning, the old woman's life changed in the most painful way. She woke up and heard loud noises outside the house. Slowly, with her aching knees, she walked to the door to see what was happening. When she stepped outside, her heart sank. Her clothes, blankets, and shoes had been thrown onto the ground like worthless trash. Her daughter stood nearby with a cold and distant expression. There was no warmth or kindness in her eyes. The old woman looked at her in confusion and sadness, hoping it was all a misunderstanding. But the truth soon became clear. "Mother, you must leave," her daughter said firmly, without even looking directly at her. The words felt like a knife in the old woman's heart. This was the house she and her husband had built together after many years of hard work. Every corner of it held memories of their life. With trembling hands and a weak voice, she whispered, "This is my own house." But her words did not change anything. Her daughter showed no sympathy, and the door was closed in her face. The old woman slowly sat down on the wooden step in front of the house. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she realized that the people she trusted most had turned against her. She stayed there for hours, crying quietly until the evening came. Yet the young couple did not know an important secret. For many years, she and her husband had carefully saved a small amount of money. The savings were hidden safely inside a stone box near the old corral, waiting for a difficult day. That same night, after the painful events of the day, the old woman slowly walked toward the place she remembered so well. Her heart was still heavy with sadness, but a small spark of hope remained inside her. Years ago, she and her husband had prepared for difficult times. Together, they had saved a small amount of money and hidden it carefully in a stone box near the old corral. Under the quiet night sky, she gently moved the stones one by one. Her hands trembled, partly from age and partly from emotion. When she finally opened the box, she saw the money they had saved over many years of hard work. At that moment, she felt a sense of relief. Although she had lost her home, she had not lost everything. With this money, she still had a chance to begin again. Early the next morning, the old woman left the place behind and began walking toward the next village. The journey was not easy for someone her age, but she continued with quiet determination. When she arrived, a kind farm family recognized her. They had heard about her difficult situation and welcomed her warmly. They offered her food, a cup of hot tea, and a small room where she could rest for the night. Their kindness touched her deeply. For the first time since being forced out of her home, she felt safe again. The following morning, She asked the villagers if there was any land for sale nearby. Fortunately, there was a good piece of land available. Using her savings, the old woman decided to buy it, believing it was the first step toward rebuilding her life. With the land she had purchased, the old woman slowly began to build a new life. Although she was no longer young and her body often felt tired, her spirit remained strong. The neighbors in the village saw her determination and decided to help. Together, they worked to build a small but sturdy wooden house on her land. It was not large or luxurious, but it was warm, safe, and filled with a sense of hope. Once the house was finished, the old woman focused on making the farm productive. She planted rows of corn across the fertile soil and began raising a few chickens. Every day, she worked patiently, doing what she could at her own pace. Life was simple, but it was peaceful. Unlike the painful memories she had left behind, this new place brought her a sense of calm and dignity. Among the people who helped her, there was a young boy from a nearby farm who often came to assist her with chores. He carried water, fixed small things around the house, and helped feed the chickens. The boy was polite, respectful, and always treated the old woman with kindness. Over time, she grew very fond of him and appreciated his help deeply. Meanwhile, far away at the old house, her daughter and son-in-law were facing the consequences of their own choices. Because they continued to avoid work and wasted their time arguing, their situation slowly became worse. Their house began to fall apart, weeds covered their yard, and their lives became filled with frustration and poverty. One day, the old woman's son-in-law walked far from his village to search for work. Life had become very difficult for him and his wife because they had lost almost everything. After walking for many hours, he arrived at a beautiful and well-kept farm. Hoping to find a job, he knocked on the door. To his great surprise, the door opened and the old woman stood before him. He was shocked and embarrassed, but he quickly asked for work, explaining that he had no money and no food. The old woman calmly agreed to hire him, but she made one important condition. He must never tell her daughter that this farm belonged to her. The man quickly promised to keep the secret. From that day on, he worked hard on the farm. The old woman treated him fairly and never showed anger toward him. Sometimes she gently asked about her daughter, and he always replied that she was doing well, even though the truth was very different.